Hey, this is Tom Webster, and this is Sounds Profitable for Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. Does the medium move the message? That's a good question. Spoiler alert, yes. This week, I'm going to preview the next research project from Sounds Profitable. But first, this week on the Deep Dive series, Sonant CEO Tony Simmons details the platform's AI to transcribe, track relevant trends on social media, and place smart ad markers to help unlock and unpack content and maximize its potential revenue. Hope you'll tune in now. Next week, Sounds Profitable is releasing the latest in our quarterly research series, The Medium Moves the Message. You should totally register for the webinar on our site. Now, I have no doubt that this next study, which was fielded for us by our partners at Signal Hill Insights, is going to be the most impactful project that we've released to date and potentially our most provocative. And it all stemmed from crankiness. Starting at the end of last year and sadly continuing well into 2023, there have been a string of articles about the bloom being off the rose in podcasting from many of the leading outlets that cover this space. Yeah, the advertising market's been a bit slow during this recent economic malaise. There's no reason to use the R word here. But where are these articles about commercial broadcast radio or network and cable TV? Our friend and Sounds Profitable partner Steve Goldstein really nailed it in something that he wrote back in his Amplify blog back in October. Right-sizing has been going on forever. Now here's what isn't declining. The audience for podcasting. It's higher than ever. So I'll bet on that. Thank you very much. With so much focus on where the dollars are going, I thought it was high time that we took a look at where attention was going. So we designed The Medium Moves the Message, our next project, to take a comparative look at advertising effectiveness across two legacy broadcast channels, commercial radio and network and cable TV, and one on-demand channel, which is, of course, podcasting. To capture this data, we surveyed over 2,000 Americans, 18 plus, and we asked them some basic questions about their TV, radio, and podcast consumption. We also looked at their perceptions of all three platforms, their attentiveness to advertising, and how they feel about the brands that support the content they consume on each. The centerpiece of the study, however, was a look at the 5 most advertised brands for each channel and how respondents perceived each one in terms of awareness, favorability, purchase consideration, and the actual use or purchase of each product or service. Thanks to a large representative sample, we were able to isolate and compare weekly users of each platform to people who were not regular viewers or listeners and observe the differences in perception for each brand. We were able to show these differentials for brands as varied as TV champ Domino's, podcast favorites like BetterHelp and Athletic Greens, and even multi-platform reach machines Progressive and Geico. In all, we analyzed 13 brands for top, middle, and lower funnel measurements just to see how much each platform was able to move the needle for its top advertisers. What does dominating share of voice achieve for a brand in commercial radio versus leading the share of voice for podcasting? Well, when we fielded this, I had a pretty good idea where this was all going to end up, and I wasn't disappointed. Spoiler alert. Podcasting looks like a very good place to put your advertising dollars, either in addition to, or in some cases, instead of commercial radio or network cable TV. In fact, when you look at mid to lower funnel measures like favorability or taking action, dominating share of voice in podcasting looks a lot better than that same effort in radio or TV. There are several reasons why this is true. And believe it or not, they're not all endemic to podcasting itself. For example, one of the data points that we're going to release in our next week's study, we report that podcast listeners are much more likely than TV or AM/FM radio users to support the brands that support their favorite shows. Podcast listeners tell us, in terms of how much they support the brands that support their favorite shows, 60% of weekly podcast listeners agree with that. That's compared to 48% of weekly TV users talking about TV shows and 43% of radio users saying the same thing about radios. Now, I think people who have been in podcasting for a while are not going to be surprised by this, but the temptation is to ascribe these results to the unique attributes of podcasting by mentioning things like, and let's go ahead and play this drinking game together, intimacy. Now, this is not totally off, But I would submit that the data point I just shared with you, which shows a significant difference between how podcast listeners support podcast ads and radio and TV consumers feel about the brands that support their favorite shows, it's a trailing variable and not a cause. It's not the reason why podcasting performs so well as you go lower into the funnel, but it's indicative of something else. That something else is a stark reality about the audiences for each medium, and that's what's really going to open your eyes when you watch The Medium Moves the Message next week. Even to this day, some brands perceive podcasts as an experimental spend, a risk, during a time when the economy dictates a flight to safety. But the truth is that the ground has shifted dramatically between where the audiences for broadcast radio and TV live and the increasingly unique place where podcasting's audience lives. It's not a future prediction. It's already happened. And these tectonic shifts in where these audiences live and who they are makes adding podcasting to a buy safer for brand advertisers, not riskier. The audience is moving. The nature and qualities of the audiences for these three platforms are moving. And this means, like Alice in Wonderland's Red Queen, we have to keep moving even to stay in the same place. And that includes agencies, brands, and buyers. A month ago, we all sat down to watch TV together. Some of us watched the big game for the football, some of us for the ads, and some of us watched it to watch Rihanna slay. Whatever the reason, we sat together and experienced the same thing. And that was the last time that all of us, demographically and psychographically speaking, watched the same thing. The circles in the Venn diagram of the various groups who watched the big game pulled apart almost immediately after the broadcast. And understanding not just where they went, but also who those humans are, is the smartest thing you can do when the economy is soft. We're going to do that exact thing next week when we debut The Medium Moves the Message. We'll be putting the microscope on broadcasting and podcasting and quantifying the impact of a podcast buy on overall brand measures. In addition, we're going to look in detail at some really big brands: McDonald's, Domino's, Subway, Geico, Progressive, and some of the, of course, brands that are important to podcasting exclusively, like BetterHelp, Athletic Greens, and more. I hope to see you there. Thanks again for listening to this podcast, Does the Medium Move the Message? This episode was built using Spooler and hosted on Art19. I'm Tom Webster. Thanks for listening.